everyone, welcome to Career Conversations. I am so excited about this episode. We have a great guest who is going to teach us, well, lots of things, but amongst others, how to increase your network and how to be able to leverage your network in order to push your career forward. Also, we are going to be talking about leadership and what to do if you're applying for a position that involves some leadership experience, but you don't have some official leadership experience in your career so far. So stay tuned for that. And, well, who is our guest? Our guest is Daniele Ticli. Daniele is the head of the Careers and External Affairs Department at the Business School of Lausanne. And he is great. He is very competent. You will see in the interview that it is very packed with information and that he is really reflective and knowledgeable about all kinds of things and how to move your career forward. So stay tuned for the interview. I will not be talking too much because, well, the interview is already quite long and quite packed, but we didn't want to cut anything out that could be of use for you. So let's go to the episode. The reason why it is quite interesting to interview you is because you had such a vivid career already. Like you started at a completely different thing, like as a football player, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So maybe you could first talk about a bit like how you ended up as a career consultant for students and making this.
Yeah. Let's start there. I think it starts always with a dream that a kid has, you know. I grew up in Italy, so where football is big, and started to play really early. I played for the team of my town, which was a relatively big town, and it was an interesting experience for me throughout my life to go from the dream that you had, and then started to tweak it, and according to your experience, to your education, to your life, really. And so when people ask me, what did you want to do? How did you end up? I always say I wanted to become a football player when I was when I was a kid, and I think until I was 16, 17 or something. And then you realize as you go further that maybe you will not make that as a profession. But I think those are the sort of things that you understand and that makes you also steer towards something else. I think that football was important to me, not only about playing it, but also talking about it, and that's why I started to write articles about football in the local newspaper when I was, I think I was 18. That was my first experience with job search and careers in general. I still remember it. I wanted to write. I wanted to have a part-time job while studying. I remember that I had a phone guide, one of those big ones, and I looked up for the 2 or 3 newspapers that I knew in town, and so I found one. It was called the Lunedì, the Monday, and I called them up. I remember, and the owner picks up the phone and he says to me, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I'm just looking for a job. I'm gonna start university in September. I think it was July or something, and I'd like to write." And he said, "Can you be here in 15 minutes? So I remember me with my scooter, going to the city center, have a little meeting with him. And he asked me to write a little article about something, anything. And I wrote an article in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I gave it to him, and he said, "Okay, great. I cannot pay you much, but it'd be really nice for you to start." And he offered me the possibility to start right away. And that's the way it started, So it was.
This is super cool. Like, I have 2 questions already.
Yes,
The first question is more like a trick that I'm also using in order to talk to CEOs rather than their secretaries, is to call at unusual hours when people are usually not working. So was this by any chance also what you did to end up being able to talk to the owner?
I would love to confirm your theory there, but I'm not sure. I think it was after lunch. It was after lunch, and also it was. I think there were about 10 people working there, so it wasn't a massive newspaper. At that time, I think there was one number, and maybe I got lucky. I don't know. But anyway, he was the decision maker. I think I would go through him anyway.
Okay, yeah. Well, but sometimes those people that are before the decision makers, like the secretaries, are a lot more fierce in turning people down. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. The so-called gatekeepers, right? Yeah, I think it used to be like that. Now we have more and more direct numbers, but I guess I got lucky that day and I went through him directly.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not only lucky, but you were probably also quite skilled at what you were doing. If you were writing an article that was good enough in 15 or 20 minutes, then probably it's not only luck, but also skill.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I knew what I was talking about because I wrote something about football, and at that time I was playing football for many years, so it wasn't anything about science, to be honest. It was really light, but I guess it was quite colorful. I always liked to write. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of skills and a bit of, try to dare about something bigger all the time. I always liked that theory. And I actually tell this story to people when they ask me about, how would I do that, and how can I reach out? And I always think, there are phone numbers. And the human still values the human. And I guess that between a phone call and an email, I would always prefer a phone call.
And, really?
Yeah, because I think even if we talk about networking and we talk about me asking a favor to someone in my network, like, I don't know, writing a letter of recommendation, for example. I have my own theory about this, that I will reach out to my network, I will send an email and I will say, I want to talk to you and I would like to schedule a phone appointment with you because I have something really important to discuss with you. And then I will get on the phone, and I think when you get on the phone, it's very hard to do a copy paste, like you would do in an email. So over the phone, it would be you, and it would be the tone of your voice. It would be a very personal touch, and I think people are more inclined to say yes over the phone rather than in an email where they can take the time or they can procrastinate and stuff. But also because I really value the fact that I can talk to someone, and having the time to talk to someone is becoming a real luxury these days.
Yeah, that is true. I have a bit of the opposite. At work, when I get a phone call, I'm immediately annoyed because someone is forcing their schedule onto me. So
yeah.
But you're planning phone calls usually, so it is not like you're calling someone and then you're demanding that time immediately, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I was getting there. First of all, I was talking about my own network. So people I really trust, people I really like, people I have a relationship with, and I hope they will never get annoyed by an email or a phone call from me. But as I said, I have this take on taking an appointment, which is, I think, really important. I always explain why. I can say something really important. I'm revamping my CV, or I am, this is something that people should go through to give a context. But then you set a time and you say, I don't need much, but maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And it's enough to have a quality conversation anyway. But that is the time that person has scheduled and is exclusive for you. So also, gives some importance to the phone call.
Yeah, that is true. I was also thinking at the same time, you're presenting yourself as someone who deserves this time. If you're asking,
I like to think that. Yeah, but, everybody deserves that, and everybody deserves a chance. Everybody deserves the time to share ideas, share concerns. I think this is also part of the networking. Networking is not only roses and flowers, really. It's really about sharing, in my opinion. And sharing is not only sharing good news, but sometimes, asking the right question to a professional can be really stimulating for that professional. So while we think that we may annoy someone with a question, actually we may trigger some very interesting mechanisms for that professional, and maybe implicitly also for us. So,
yeah. So now that we are already talking about networking, you're working amongst others, or you're very good at building bridges. and networking in general. And I was wondering, how do you network without coming across as creepy? Because I think this is a pitfall that lots of people have, and it seems to be natural to you. So maybe you cannot really answer this. But the other day I just had an interaction where the person was always touching my arm, and I was thinking, just stop touching me. And I was so repelled in the end. So
okay, that sounds like a very first good rule. Don't touch. Being touchy maybe can be perceived quite badly. I think networking and not coming across as you said in the preparation for this, like having a second agenda, for me is like try not to have a second agenda.
Yeah, this is good advice. Yeah.
Like if you think about, I go to many events, and I'm not saying that I do the right thing all the time. I want to share with you some of the thoughts that I have. Is that we always try to, in a very short time, to impress, always to say the right thing, and target the people that are decision makers and stuff like that. Good networking, in my opinion, is something you do, as we said, without a second agenda and with a very genuine interest in the other person. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I think that we all like to get people to show interest in us, right? Mm-hmm. So, the questions that I was referring earlier is an example, like what kind of questions are you asking someone? Like who is not annoyed by a stupid question? A lot of people are. But if you come across with a very intelligent question or with, you look at the name tag of someone at an event and, you can recognize more or less where that person is from, and maybe you can come up with some interesting trips you made in that country and make something out of it as an icebreaker. And really, the ability to talk about nothing, if you like, is a really strong one, because it really shows your communication skills. Mm-hmm. And if someone ever wants to recommend you for a job, we know that, you can have a lot of skills, hard skills, soft skills, but, the communication is really important. Mm-hmm. If you're very good at, IT, or you're very good at digital marketing, but you're not able to communicate with your peers, that can be a big minus. Mm-hmm. So, networking is really where you show your communication skills. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to impress, but I think that the focus should be, is that person going to have a good memory about me? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily technical or the name even sometimes, but it really it's got to be something that generates good memory. So a smooth conversation and stuff like that. And and another thing is that sometimes we push ourselves to network with someone. Because then you realize that you start talking to someone and there's no click. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also human to acknowledge that. And if there is no click, there is no click. I think that you need to go with the networking that is quality networking. And if you focus on the right maybe person for that night, and there is no click, you are taking away the time from actually talking to someone who may click with. Mm-hmm. So that's my take. It may sound brutal sometimes, but go where there is the click.
Yeah, this is also very good advice. And would you think, since you are, I guess, teaching those or similar things to students, that some people have, well, I don't want to sound mean, but such low social skills that they don't really feel whether or not there is a click, because usually maybe there is no click or something?
I don't know. I think that there is someone for everyone. Mm-hmm. Let's not assume that people we are going to network with have the best social skills. Mm-hmm. Maybe two introverts who meet themselves at an event, they might come up with a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm also, I would consider myself an introvert actually, but I'm not shy, which is a huge difference. I think you seem to be a very extroverted person in the sense that you draw energy from interaction with other people, and it's really, you get out uplifted. And I also really enjoy interaction with other people, but then I need to go and recharge on my own. So I think this is the difference between an extrovert and an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized for myself, in terms of what an interesting conversation is for me, I'm usually a lot more interested in why people do what they do
Mm-hmm.
rather than what they do. And when I realized that I can just ask those types of questions and it turns into a very interesting conversation for both people, it has really increased my networking skills a lot.
Yeah, no, I don't think I can agree more. I think the why is what drives people. What is the purpose of people, and you may realize that there is a strong purpose in people choices, and quite inspiring sometimes. I think that we may get into points in life where we don't know what to do. And I think it's actually pretty right to get inspiration from others, and see what drove some decision-making processes. Why did you choose that specific company or situation at that stage of your life, and how it affected your life, professional, personal, and stuff like that. Eventually, the great stuff happens in your spare time, and when you do the things that you like and you're obliged to, you're not playing a role. So going on again on the human and on the real us is I think is a very good idea.
Yeah.
After all.
And this is ultimately also why I started this podcast, and because I'm so curious why people choose to spend 8 hours or more of their time in a certain job or another job. So I think this is such an interesting question, and I hope it is also interesting for more people.
Yeah. Do you want to ask me that question?
Yes, I was going to ask you this this question.
No, well, for example, I love education. That was my third life, if you like it. I started as a football player. Then when you realize that it's not really the thing that is going to make you, you're not going to make it a profession. Then I switched on to journalism, which I really liked. I like to write and stuff like that. And then at some point, I landed on education, if you like, by accident. It wasn't really my plan, but I started to explore this industry, and I really love the fact that we can have an impact on others, and the impact is quite strong, if you like, in education. And I realized that when I was working in recruiting, when I was working in student experience, when I work in student leadership development, and then in careers, I always noticed that there was one common denominator, which was helping others developing. And you can do that across any role, really. If you like the industry, for example, you think this is my industry. And that's why I think this is my industry, and I want to stay in it as much as I can, because it really gives me the chance to share my knowledge, and also to see people who really want to learn, because in education you find students and participants in the MBA programs, they really want to learn and they really engage in such a thing. And thinking about the employees of the future, the fact that you can really have an impact on that, it makes you feel valuable also in the society, and that's what drives me, for example. So not for everybody. Not for everybody, but it's important again to choose something where you can fulfill your potential, and again for yourself. And then if you're happy, you raise the happiness of the society by a little bit, but you do. So right people at the right places, sort of thing. So thanks for asking the question.
You're welcome. And you just said that you want to help others developing. And I was wondering, do you see common things where people get stuck in their development? Do you see some mistakes or some errors of thought that people usually make that make them not progress anymore in their career?
Well, when students, I noticed that for example, for MBA students, these are professionals. They go back to education. They get into executive education, and they say, I want to have a career advancement, or I want to switch career. And they seem to have that pretty clear in their mind when they start the program, and then they start the program. And we always say, the MBA is something transformational, like any other academic degree should be. And they get to a point where they're a bit confused because they're exploring other areas, they're finding out about skills that they didn't know they have, and they develop skills, and then they start thinking differently. And I think that's where they need to talk to someone, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd love to be that someone for them. Mm-hmm. So, and not because they're making any mistake. They're simply going through personal and professional transformation that needs to be addressed. Needs to be addressed. You can't just say, "Oh, he's confused," and something will come out of the confusion. Yeah, maybe, but if you talk to people about what drives you and what it makes you happy, and if that changes or changed in the last few months. You need to acknowledge, you need to investigate on that, and I think that will give you a lot of clarity about what you want to do. So the point that they reach sometimes is that they get to a very high point of self-awareness when they get into the program, because they think, okay, I got admitted, I can do that, I'm going to advance in my career. Then they get at some point throughout the program when they think, oh my God, I'm not going to do it, a lot of work. Why am I doing this? They even question that. And that's where, the storm happens, but they also need to start verbalizing. They need to start saying how they feel and reaching out to people who can listen to them and also throw questions at them. Not necessarily throwing advice at them, but like questions that they can answer themselves. So I would say that this is one of the crucial points that professionals get in their career where they get a bit stuck, and they only need a little bit of help to understand more about what's going on.
So acknowledging that being stuck is not a failure, but more like a transition in a way towards something new.
I think these are the turning points in life. I mean, if you never question yourself, I don't know. I mean, you being stuck in these sort of questions like what do I want to become? What is the real purpose that is driving me? If it's not enriching that one, I don't know what it is, in the sense that I met a lot of people in my life who had these kind of questions at the age of 45, maybe, where they were already working as professionals, they had a career, but they kept on questioning themselves about, what makes him happy as a professional? How can I have an impact? Again, I want to go on the impact, because you can have an impact on your life and on other people's life. So no, I actually think it's a signal of intelligence. I think it's something that is really healthy in the long run.
Have you also been through such a phase where you felt stuck?
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, when I was working as a journalist back in Italy, obviously I thought that would be my career. But then, for love, I had to move to the Netherlands. At that time, I was younger, and I had to switch also industry, because I couldn't operate as a journalist in a language that was not mine. Okay, so I couldn't write in Dutch. I could not. I could write in English, but when you need to write professionally, your level needs to be really, really high. And so I was asking myself, what am I going to do? Right? From journalism, it seems to be, far away from business and stuff like that. And then I remember that I had this interview with this company. It was in education, and they were looking for people in recruitment. And it was one of the hiring managers I had an interview with, and I expressed that concern, and I said, I'm not sure about from journalism to recruitment, how it works and stuff like that. And he said to me, I actually have a feeling you'll be great at this job, because you need to ask a lot of questions doing recruiting, and you need to ask very thoughtful questions to candidates, because it's something not everybody can qualify for these universities. So you need to be doing a good job, and the fact that you did journalism, asking a lot of questions, that could be a real advantage for you to perform in this job. And it's something that I never thought about. Again, having that sparring partner that can help you. I wasn't convinced. I tell you the truth. I wasn't convinced. But then after that chat I had with him, I thought, okay, I want to give it a try. And then, the rest is history. So, yes, I had. And hopefully I will have again. Where you question yourself about, okay, what's next? It's a journey, and professional life and life in general is a journey.
Yeah, I can really identify with this, because I also had a crisis about 3 years ago or something, where I was finishing university, and I didn't really know what to do, because I kind of hated what I was doing back then. And I had the luxury to be able to go to Australia and then to Bali to really think about what it is that I want to do. And I realized it was the environment rather than the job itself. So, but I had a phase where I said, I will never touch a pipette again, which has not worked out very well. And I also understand your desire to say, I hope it happens again, because, I already told you before we started recording that I did the Camino de Santiago, and I was hoping for another major epiphany in my life. But somehow it wasn't there, because I'm doing so much reflection, I think, also through asking other people questions, that unfortunately nothing has happened. But I really understand how valuable those things can be. And then I realized we have already taken some time, but I want to scratch one more topic, which is leadership. Because I got the impression that you teach leadership to people that don't have a lot of leadership experience yet.
So at the school here, specifically with BSL, we have one of the pillars that is strongly related to leadership, which is entrepreneurship. Okay, so that's where we try to teach leadership through teaching soft skills. Students often bring this up, saying, I don't have leadership experience. And I think that it's important to distinguish between having leadership experience or having management experience. Because when we talk about professional development, and if you look at a simple CV, sometimes I sit down with a student, we look at the CV, and the student says, can I really put leadership skills? Because I never was in a leadership position. I always invite students to really rewind and really think, is that really true that you never had any leadership experience? I don't think leadership starts when you start working. I think leadership is when you step up for a friend of yours when you're 10, someone who's been bullied, or when you step up in the middle of the class to defend someone, or to simply take the lead on an initiative, or in a football team, or in any other sport, by the way. So I always invite students to think leadership is not about being appointed in a leadership position per se, or a management position where you have to lead others. Do you really lead others? Maybe that's the question. Do you really lead others? So I think everyone had the chances in life to show leadership skills at some point. Some people are more inclined for that, but I think that there is a leader in each and every of us that can be showed in different ways, in your family, as a big brother, or as a father, or as a mother. Then the advice that I always give to people is that, for me, I like a definition of leadership as a good leader for me is someone who tries to create more leaders, not necessarily create followers. There is now this pressure of, such a leader online because he's got so many followers. I don't know about that. I have my questions about that. And I think if you really try to create other leaders is the way you actually create more leadership in the world. And I think we need more leadership in the society. So certainly you can train some skills that can help you in some situations. Certainly listening, certainly empathy, I think really important for people who want to lead. Communication skills, how to talk to people, it's really important, having a vast terminology so that you can address and discuss many different things with people and not getting stuck on certain topics only. So for me, a leader is a communicator, is someone who is able to influence, but never in a malicious way. And also I have my own opinion that one person should never define him or herself as a leader. I think it's other people that define you as a leader. I always have my reservations when I hear people saying I am a leader, because I still feel that it's other people recognizing whether we're leaders or not.
Yeah, this was also my first thought, that a major part of being a leader is of having followers. Otherwise you're just a person going somewhere, And I think it is also, I guess it might be important to actually be going somewhere, because I guess there are also lots of people that are just trying to maintain the status quo of whatever they're just doing. And then I feel is also, it might be being a bit like fussy about the term leader, but I feel a leader is never just staying and maintaining the status quo, but actually having a vision and going somewhere. What would you say?
Yeah, definitely having a vision about something seems to be quite crucial, but also without probably thinking about what I was saying, when my point was like thinking about constantly proving leadership to others. I think that if you are a leader, then people will acknowledge that. And also a big thing about leadership is probably, your ability to say, I have made a mistake, or I am sorry. It's not about looking invincible. It's not about being a superhero. I think it's really to look like you are a human being with all the good, the strengths and the weaknesses, acknowledging that and taking any time you fall as a learning opportunity. So that's how you increase your leadership development, your leadership skills in general.
Yeah, and I have a very specific question that might be interesting for people that are doing a startup, because I imagine they are really in love with their project, with what they are doing. And then I guess it might get quite easy to micromanage people, because you really want to make sure that everything is going well. You probably don't have a lot of money and so on, and you want to be as efficient as possible. And I think what can happen is then, although you're trying to suggest to your employees that you are trusting them, you're still on top of them somehow and really, micromanaging, controlling. So how can people overcome this mistake?
So a couple of things about that. So the first one is focusing on recruiting the right people. Because if you really make sure that you hire people who are self-starters and they really fully buy into the vision and embrace the vision of the company or the startup fully, it's going to be the same thing driving the owner or the founder and the employee. So probably less micromanagement will be needed. And the second one, in my opinion, is leading by example. Okay, so you can say to people all the time what you want for them, or you can act in a way that people can look up to you and say, okay, so that's the way he thinks, that's the way he reacts to an issue, that's the way he appreciates his own company, that's the way he deals with a press release, that's the way, sometimes indirectly we can give so much to others that making others arrive at conclusion by themselves, it's always going to be more, stronger, and it's going to be more sustainable for the company itself. I think micromanagement, we are moving away since a while. Micromanagement is something that takes away sometimes the pride of people, from both sides, really, and is not seen as very inspiring. So I think that again, leading by example, and again, and a big one here, trusting people ability is key to have great results. I don't think it's micromanagement.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And so I have a follow-up question to your first point. So you said hire the right people, which is like easy if you have, for instance, a lot of money. But I can imagine that if you have a startup and only have a small budget, that your choices are quite limited in terms of who to hire. So what would you say, how do I make the job as attractive as possible so that I attract people, even though there might be not a lot of money in the end for them, but more like an ideology or like also being in love with the project?
Well, nowadays you hear a lot about the flexibility, right? And say, you're going to have flexibility, you can work from home, you can have shares in the company. If you think about Google and how they started, and I don't think they were able to afford any salary. But I think I'm not sure about this, but I think they gave shares to their employees, and again, see what happens. So probably looking at maybe younger people, but with the right energy. Startup is about experimenting. So someone who's able to, maybe even someone who doesn't have all this corporate experience could represent an advantage. Someone that can start fresh. So maybe at some point paying for additional studies to them in the long run. There are different things that could be a good way to recruit the right people. But again, let's not underestimate the fact that a lot of employees nowadays still go for the purpose and not necessarily going for the money. I mean, the money should never be seen as, it's a consequence. It should never be seen like the main aim for some people who actually want to do something they like. So, for sure, choosing people who are not necessarily only attracted by money, because that can have a boomerang effect, but they're really buying into the company vision and believe in that. Because, as I said, I think money will be a consequence of that. But probably the learning outcome from that employee will be massive. So also looking at that as a reward for employees, the learning together with the rest, flexibility and so on.
Yeah, so this is really good advice, because I think this is troubling lots of people to the question, how do I get the right people for my startup? So I feel we've covered a lot of ground and the time has really flown. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for coming over and taking the time.
Yeah,
really interesting, and again, happy if I can have.
So how did you enjoy the episode? I really, really enjoyed it so much, because like I said, I had the feeling Daniele is just super knowledgeable and competent about all things careers. One of my favorite advice was on how to network properly, that you shouldn't be networking with an agenda in mind, but more, a network should evolve organically, and you should network for the pleasure of meeting the other person. I think this is a great way to not be creepy when you're networking, because I think this is a trap that lots of people fall into. At least this is something that I've been observing quite often. I've been very uncomfortable in many networking events. So yes, I think this is great advice. And also it was very reassuring to me that you don't necessarily need to have some official leadership experience in order to be a leader, and that we actually learn to be a leader in everyday life, starting from childhood on. So yes, I enjoyed the episode very much. I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope you could learn something from it. If you did, then maybe write into the comments what was your favorite advice from Daniele Ticli. And also, of course, subscribe, ring the bell in case you want to be notified, and visit our website, Career Conversations. I will link to it below, and if you want to follow me or if you want to follow Daniele Ticli, I will be linking to our Instagram and also to our LinkedIn accounts. So, with that, I hope to see you in the next episode and wish you a great day. Bye.